Hi guys. How are you doing? Enjoying the nice weather? It's been a little bit cooler. Hasn't been so raging hot lately.
But it's been nice.
Yeah. And it was good to see you the other day. I guess it was last Friday. Hopefully we'll do more of that kind of a thing. It seemed like everybody enjoyed it. I hope parents weren't mad you stayed so late. But anyway, it was a lot of fun.
It was good to say goodbye to Alec before he headed out on the road.
Yep.
So, and good to see Ivy.
Yeah.
So, thank you for coming after work. So, it was good to see you guys.
Yeah, and Caitlin. We hadn't seen Caitlin for quite some time, so that was good.
So, we know Alec and Sam will be on the road for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, have a good time, and we'll get into the lesson.
All right.
Bye. Okay, well, I said back when we started all of this that I was not going to get into the second book, the New Answer Book 2, until we were back meeting in person. But, well, who knew that we would be in August and still doing lessons from home or online. So, going to get into this starting this week. The first question is, what is a biblical worldview? So we'll get into that. It's a short chapter. And if at any point you guys want the chapter, the next chapter we're going to do, let me know and I will get it to you. But I know that a lot of you didn't read them when I was handing them out anyway, so I figured I'd just start in, and if you want them, let me know and I will get them to you. For those of you that are coming to church on Sunday mornings, I can copy it or get it to you then. If you're not, I will make arrangements to get it to you somewhere else. So with that, chapter 1 is, what is a biblical worldview? So it talks a lot about the Bible has been under attack certainly for the last 150 years or so, with creationism getting into the schools and just as an alternative method of how the world was created being taught. And now, as many of you know, creation is the only thing that is taught, and the biblical view, evolution is the only thing being taught, and evolution was what got into the schools in the last 150 years. And now evolution is the only thing that's taught, and creationism is not being taught, is not accepted at all, and is banned from the schools. So the book gets into, just talks about that. And so the biblical worldview is broken down into the seven C's. So it starts with creation. So God created the world in 7 days, or in 6 days, and rested on the seventh day around 6,000 years ago. I know we spent a lot of time in the last book covering that. So he created it in 6 days, rested on the seventh, approximately between 6,000 and 8,000 years ago. There's a little bit of variance there. When he was done, the world was good. There was no sin in the world. There wasn't a lot of the issues we have today, right? The world was good, man was good. There wasn't weeds, there wasn't disease, there wasn't dying. Adam and Eve were vegetarians, they ate vegetables. There were dinosaurs. So there wasn't curse. The curse hadn't started. There wasn't death. There wasn't violence, disease, sickness, thorns. There may have been the weeds that we see today, but they weren't weeds that caused the problems. They weren't seen as problems. So everything was done. When the world was created, I mean, it's pretty evident from the DNA that's in us and in every other living creature that we were created by an intelligent being, right? Something smarter than we are, even as we are today. I mean, DNA is so complex, has so much information. It controls everything our bodies do, our minds do. We still don't understand it today, and man has these massive computers and has spent thousands of, probably billions of hours studying the human DNA that God created. And it all works together, right? And it works together in us and all the other living creatures and plants in the world. So it's hard to argue that it was something smart created us. Whether you believe that's the God that did create us or something else, it's hard to argue with that. So the second C is corruption, right? After God created everything that was good, God gave Adam and Eve one command, right? They could not eat of the tree of knowledge, right? Pretty simple, one tree that they couldn't eat of. They couldn't follow that rule, right? They were deceived by Satan. Man continues to be deceived by Satan. And hard to believe that man today believes that they can't be deceived by Satan when Adam and Eve had everything on their side, right? They walked literally directly with God, right? And they still were deceived by Satan. They had very few rules to follow, right? I mean, one tree that they needed to stay away from. But they couldn't do that, right? And with Adam, he ushered in death and sickness, sorrow, right? There was no pain before that. There was no reason. But there was a curse in the world after that, and that curse would be passed down to all generations from then on. So, so it's the world we live in right now. It's decay and remnant. There is death because of this, because of the first sin. Every man will die now. And it gets shorter, right? The life expectancy has gone up in the last few decades, but for the most part, life has gotten shorter. I mean, we look at the first generations, and they lived for close to 1,000 years. I mean, 800, 900 years. Now, most people don't live to 100 years. It's gotten a little longer, but, it's still, most of us won't live to be 100 years old. So sin came into the world. It's passed down through all men. There's now pain and suffering. Animals are eating other animals. We eat animals. Some animals eat us. So sometimes that's not very pleasant. But there's poisonous snakes. There's poisonous spiders. We don't have a lot of that on this side of the mountains in Oregon, but there are those out there. You travel around the world. Michelle has a cousin who lives in Australia that has seven of the most 10 deadliest snakes in the world. And while I'd love to go to Australia, that scares me. And they've seen them, and they live in a city. So they've had snakes in their third-story apartment. So that just kind of freaks me out. So after corruption was catastrophe. So the descendants of Adam and Eve, the earth continued to get more evil and wicked. It didn't take long, and God sent a judgment down, and it was the flood. And we talked a lot about the flood again in the last book. God destroyed the world. He allowed Noah and Noah's family, the one righteous man and his family, 3 sons and their wives, to build an ark and stay alive. So he didn't destroy man, but he destroyed most of the men, most of the animals in the world at that time. He saved one of every kind, or one pair of every kind, right? And a few others as well, like the birds. There were 7 and stuff. But they built a big ark that nobody had ever seen rain before. The world changed. And I remember as a kid thinking, well, if we could just find the Garden of Eden. But now realize that the Garden of Eden is gone. It was destroyed with the flood. You're not going to go find where the Garden of Eden was. That is destroyed. So people searching for the Garden of Eden can search all they want. They're not going to find where the Garden of Eden was. It was destroyed in the flood because of man's sin. But and people are searching for the ark. I don't know. It may be out there. It may be somewhere. But it was made out of wood. This was thousands of years ago. I don't know. I cut firewood and it will last maybe 4 or 5 years before it's starting to rot. So I can't imagine that the ark would still be around. But I guess it's possible that it's there somewhere. But it would be very high up on a mountain. So, but there was lots of animals in the ark. They were there for a long period of time, but they were saved, and they did survive the flood and had the patience to build the ark over 100 years of construction. Most things we build today take maybe a few years to build. So I can't imagine 100 years of construction. That would be just crazy. Just the time to get things done, and building something that big without modern tools and cranes and all kinds of stuff would just be crazy. But catastrophe happened. The world changed. The world is a much different place. We didn't have rain before that. We didn't have a lot of the things. So the world changed. The world was wiped clean. Noah and his family came out of the other side, being the only humans. So at that point, there was only 8 humans on the earth, and they were good. But it didn't take long again before things were not going as God had told them to do. God told them to go forth and multiply and spread over the whole face of the earth. And they didn't do that. They hung around together. So God had to create confusion. Roughly 100 years later, after the flood and Noah and his family came out of the ark, all the humans were working together and they decided to build a tower to reach to the heavens. So then God decided to make things hard again. He created the different languages for them to speak so they didn't understand each other. That was, most of us don't speak multiple languages, but even if we do, we only speak maybe 1 or 2. So if they're speaking different languages, you can imagine if you don't understand each other, how hard it would be for things to get done. So God made different languages. They had to, and they left in groups and found people that spoke a similar language to them. Again, God's hand in that. He obviously made enough people of each speaking each language that they could go and create their own groups and travel away. And so we can trace that back. Today we have thousands of languages, but fewer than 20 language families. So all of these different languages can be traced back to 20 family languages. So French and German and all that came out of one family or one base language. And it's, as generations went on and people lived apart, they changed it. We speak English. It came from Britain, England. I don't know how many of you have been there. I have not, but I've heard British people speak. Sometimes it's pretty hard to understand them. And then you look at people from like New England area and some of the words they use and some of the phrases they use and their accent. Sometimes it's hard to understand. You go to southern United States, some of those people, for me anyway, it's hard to understand. Just with the accent they speak. And then you go up to like Scotland. They speak English, a version of English. It's different than us, different words, different sayings for things. So God created confusion. He had them speaking different languages. They spread out and they spread around the world. Kind of similar to what God did to the church in Jerusalem. He created hardship on them so they would go out and do what he told them to do and go spread around the world. So man is not great at following what God wants us to do. So the next C is Christ. right? God's perfect creation was corrupted by sin from Adam. So the only way to fix that was to have a perfect person live, and no man, holy person that was holy man and not be part and not holy God could do that. No man could be perfect and not sin their whole life. Most of us sin very young, before we're even really conscious of it, right? Go to the nursery, find out if you don't believe me. God sent his only son. He lived as holy man, as a whole man on earth, but he was holy God, did not sin. He lived on this earth for 33 years. He was tempted in all the same ways we are tempted, but did not sin. As many of you know, that would be very hard, not getting mad at your parents, being a teenager. He was a teenager. He grew up. He didn't get mad at his parents. He didn't curse at his parents. He didn't disobey his parents, which would be very hard, being a holy God, to have to go clean your room. He had brothers and sisters. Not being mean or rude to them would be very hard, especially when you're perfect. And he was probably the only child ever to be perfect. And I'm sure his brothers and sisters teased him for that. But he didn't sin in that. The next C is the cross, right? Jesus is called the last Adam in 1 Corinthians 15:54, where Adam caused all man to sin. Beyond that, Jesus gave us a way out, right? Jesus, being the last Adam, gave us a way to get to heaven, because he was perfect. He lived a sinless life. He is the redemption for us. I mean, there's two ways for us to get to heaven. One is to live a perfect life. None of us are ever going to do that. The second is to have a mediator between us and God, and that is Jesus Christ. And that is the only way we're going to get to heaven. The last one is consummation, right? So God gave us what would happen, right? God is going to, at the end of time, God is going to make a new heaven and a new earth, and we that believe in God will be there and live with him. So he placed in, let's see, what was it? Revelations 22:3, and to make a new heaven and a new earth. In this new place, there will be no death, no crying or pain. So if you believe in Jesus, if Jesus comes back before you die, you will go there. And if not, if you believe in Jesus and you die, you will be with him in heaven. So next week, we will go into chapter 2. So chapter 2 is, what is the best proof of creation? So again, if you want a copy of that chapter, let me know. I will get it to you this week if you want to read it in advance. If not, that's what we'll be studying. You can also get the book online if you want to have a copy of your own. It's the New Answer Book 2 by Ken Ham, and it should be it's like $14, $14 or $15. It's probably on Amazon. So I encourage you to buy it if you want it. So we will be going through that for the next roughly 30 weeks. Hopefully by then we'll be meeting in person or before. So thanks, and hopefully we see a lot of you at church this morning. Bye.